In this video, I will display a row or record from my database tutorial. Okay, I'm going to do that by writing a MySQL where clause. So the steps are, first thing I'm going to do is create a public function read user inside my database. That function will become a method because a function inside a class is a method. So when I start a new object, when I create a new object of the database class, so automatically the constructor code will run. So that means that every time I make that object from the database class, a new connection property will be established or set up. If this connection is successful, then all of the information will be here and I can write different SQL queries on the different methods because I'm calling the disconnection property. If that connection is not successful, this is going to be null. And of course, the query is not going to work and it's going to throw an error. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that function, public function. It is a public function because I'm going to be able to access that function here. I'm going to call that function here, or method, because I'm talking about classes. I'm going to call it outside the class. So it's not a private one, but it's a public one. So the name is read user, and it's going to accept an argument. So right now the parameter is going to be ID, and I'm going to explain to you why later. So I'm going to write the SQL query. That's the first thing that I'm going to do over here. So the SQL is going to be select everything. I want to select the ID, the name, and the age. Okay, so if I want to select all of the columns, I do this asterisk over here. All right, but if I want to select only the name and the age, I specify the columns that I want to select. Okay, let's just select those columns. So I'm selecting name and age from, what is the name of that table? So remember, the name of the table is users. Here it is, users. That's the table, users, from the database tutorial. So select the name and age from users. And now here's where I'm going to use my where clause here. Because I'm only going to select one row, one record. I'm not going to select everything as I did with display users, where I was selecting everything. So select name, age from users, where user. Well, actually, I need to know which column I'm going to use as a filter. So I'm going to use ID, and we need to get used to this because in databases, the only column that we need to protect and not change is the ID. We can't be updating the ID, for example, 9 here for Camilo, because it needs to be a unique identifier. This is how we're going to find Camilo 9. If we change the ID every now and then, we're just gonna get confused. So all these numbers have to be unique. Okay, so where ID equals, and here I'm going to refer to a named parameter with a placeholder. Okay, name ID. We don't know what ID yet, so we're going to establish that in an array. So, and that is the next step. So I'm going to define an array here, right? An array to refer to the name parameters. So I'm writing this array to refer to this ID when I execute my statement. So we're gonna say this is an array, and the key ID, which is this one. So this one is the same as this one. This is pointing to here. So that is going to be my parameter over here. Okay, so the argument that I'm going to set when I call read user. All right, so that's it for the array. I can also do this. I can just say, for example, user ID. But if I do that, I also need to refer to user ID here with the same wording, okay? User ID and user ID. I'm just gonna leave it like this so I can show you that it's actually going to work. What's important here is to use the exact name of the column ID. Okay, so next step, I want to show you step by step so you know what we're doing. We already did this one, and now we're going to prepare a statement with the connection property. Remember, this is the connection property from the class. This is where we're storing all of the information from the connection. So I'm going to say statement. So this will be my statement. Is going to come from the property of the class database this connection, and now I'm going to prepare. What am I going to prepare? I'm going to prepare um, my my SQL over here. All right, so I'm going to prepare this. So I'm just going to get it ready to be executed. And if you've watched I think my second video where I was displaying users, instead of preparing, I used query. Why? Because when you use query, you don't need to use named parameters. Here, I wanted to select everything without a where clause, so I didn't need to use a named parameter over here, and I didn't need to create an array to refer to that named parameter. So that's why I'm using prepare here. But if you're using named parameters, specifying filters, so you do need to use prepare statement. Okay, so the next step is to execute this statement with the named parameters array. So I already have the array here. Remember, I won't stop repeating because this is very important. This refers to the parameter ID over here. Okay, so I'm going to execute that statement that I already created. This is just a game of objects and classes. So for example, statement also becomes an object here when you establish a connection, and it also has methods. Okay, so let's just say statement, the method, execute, and what are we going to execute? We're going to execute over here. Oh my God, I forgot actually what I was going to do. But if that happens, you can always refer to all the methods you've used before. Oh yeah, and I actually have the instructions here. That's why instructions are very important, because you can also think ahead, and if you forget something, you just go back to your own instruction. So execute the statement with the named parameters array. So I'm executing the array. So please always remember that you execute the array just to connect this data over here, or this array, to the query itself. Okay, so you're actually linking the SQL in the array when you execute, and before everything's connected. So I have to show you the connections. So this statement execute comes from this newly created object over here, which is statement. All right, so if that works, remember from the other methods, if that works, you can actually call the method row count over here, remember, from creating users. So if I'm able to read, well, actually, no, forget about that. This will throw an array if I say fetch all. Let me just show you over here. So if I say, let's just print this. If I say statement fetch all, so it's going to give you all of the results that has, that that this clause applies to. If this condition is satisfied, and then it's going to show you all the names with the ID 9. But since there's only one, that's why keeping a unique ID is important. It's just going to show you one. I just want to show you what I mean. So remember, I'm calling the method read user with an ID. That's why I wrote this method. Remember, we're going to use this class later in the future to build an API, and so you can learn how to build an entire application. but this is the backbone of the application, interacting with the data. So let's call read user. So we already created an object here, db read user, and here you see Visual Studio Code is telling me what is a parameter. So ID. So let's see if that actually works. Oh, actually, you know what? I have to write the ID. Oh, come on. 9. So let's say I want to see Camilo's information. I'm only going to be able to see name and age. So let's see if that happens. There you go. So I'm seeing name Camilo and the age 55. I'm visualizing that as an array because this is throwing all of the records that satisfy that condition. But if, for example, instead of an ID to filter the information, I say I want to be thrown all the people. Okay, I don't know if the age is repeated. Okay, but these are different names. Okay, let me just create a user with this method with some similar characteristics. So create user similar traits. Create users, and the first argument is a name. Let's just write another Camilo who is 38. Okay, so when I create this user, I will be displayed all of the users over here. Okay, so that's from another video where I explained that. So let's see. So here, I don't know why this is repeated twice because I have this function here twice. Okay, I already fixed it. So we have Camilo 38. Now, if instead of reading by ID, I read the user by name, so I want to be shown all the users that are Camilo. So let me just go back to the database. Let's see how I can modify my method so I can accomplish that. So read user, instead of ID, I say by name. Read user by. Actually, I have to add that so it's more clear. So by name, I would need to say select the name and age from users where name. Now I'm changing name here and also here name, and the name from the array is equal to the name in the parameter. Okay, so if I do that, I'm going to be shown, sorry about that. I'm going to be shown all the users that have this name, and that's of course an array because I'm saying fetch all of the records that accept that condition. Okay, so let me see that. I already said that I want all users that are Camilo. And here you go. So I have two elements with the name Camilo. Two and I have an array with two elements, index 0 and index 1. All of these two Camilos. So let's say I want to display all the users that are 38 years old. So we have, okay, let me see if let me just refresh my database over here so I can see the newly created one, which is Camilo. There you go. So I want to be shown all of the users that are 38. I need to also change the method because I'm filtering it by name, and now I want to filter it by age. There's a shortcut here, Control D, so I can select all of the words that have name. So I'm just going to say, I want to start over here, and I'm going to say select by age. Okay, and I have age repeated here. Okay. I also want to show you what happens when I say I want to see everything, all of the columns, select everything from users where age equals age. So I want to see all of the users that are 38 years old. So read user 38, and let's see what happens. There you go. So I can see Ivan and Camilo that are 38. Okay. Just for security reasons, you shouldn't show your ID here because I usually get information from the records with the ID. Okay, so I just wanted to show you why this is thrown an array with different elements. And you can actually leave it like this. Later on, I'm going to change these methods. So instead of, for example, read user, I'm going to say read row or select row, because I want to use those methods later when I create models for my tables. So actually, when you're connecting to the database, you actually just want to create some custom functions here. So later on, the models can use those functions or those methods, and you can actually customize those methods in the models according to what you need. So you can be more specific, like read user or read tasks or whatever. But I'll show you what I mean later in the future. So I'm gonna leave this with just the ID. Let me just go back here. I'm using Control Z to go back to just put in an ID so I can fetch my users by ID. I'm going to fetch one for Ivan. So let's see if that works. I already undid that. Here you go. I have it by ID over here. There you go. And if I just want to be, of course, if you're filtering by ID, you will always get one result. And if that's the case, all you have to do is put read user one and the first indexed. So it's always going to show you this one, but now it's not going to be displayed as an array, but just as an object. Okay, so let's see that. All right, so let's say it says null because I did it backwards. I have to say, okay, just give me a second. Let's see what happens. Let me just fix that. I think I'm making a mistake here. So let's see. I want to get the first one, okay? So actually it is over here. Statement fetch all. Let me see if it's just the first one. The first one over here. There you go. So instead of fetching everything, I just want to fetch the first one, index 0. All right. So here I can actually visualize it as an object, not as an array, because I know for sure that if I'm filtering with ID, I will only get one element. So what happens if I just want to see database read user? Well, actually no, I can't do anything here. I'll just have to call the method like this. So that's it. I hope everything's clear. If you have a question, please do ask on the comments below this video. All right.